Hello, everyone. Chandra Easton here from Star Astrology Healing, speaking in our group Heavens Above about what I've termed the new epoch, which really is kind of code for Neptune's final movement into Aries. It did move into Aries in 2025, but it's not going back into Pisces now. It's staying in Aries. So I'm talking about that and the solar eclipse, which is important, but of lesser importance, I would say, and then what's going on with Neptune. So there's the things that I'll be covering. The solar eclipse is a partial solar eclipse and annular. I'm not quite sure what that means. Partial solar eclipse, 17th of February, not far from Antarctica, off the northwest coast of Antarctica. I'll be talking about the chart for the eclipse and a bit of a timeline and what it might mean for us on an individual level. Then I'll shift and start speaking about Neptune entering Aries, and particularly the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in 0 degrees of Aries, and ways we can work with these energies to sort of stay in the balanced sacred space, and a few solutions for the insanity that we see on the planet. Okay, so let's get going. As I said, 17th of February, did I tell you it's the last degree of Aquarius? Now, the last degree of any sign of the zodiac is always significant because it's as if there's a bit of a pause until the next sign starts. So we have a bit of a pause in the Aquarian energy. As I mentioned, you can see here that there's Antarctica in the middle there. I put my glasses on. Here we have the Indian Ocean, and over here we have the Atlantic Ocean. So really, it's the bottom of our hemispheric southern pole and into two oceans. It's not unusual that we have eclipses on the poles, but I always wonder whether because traditionally wherever the shadow goes, it activates that region of the planet. That's called the path of Umbra. So I always kind of wonder, when the path of Umbra goes over the oceans, does that heat the oceans up? Does it change sea life? Does the oceans impact the continents? All of those things. Yes, okay. There's such a thing called an eclipse window. So even though the eclipse is actually on the 27th of January, 3 weeks, beg your pardon, the 17th of February, 3 weeks either side, that is basically starting from, yesterday, and running until the 10th of March, that 6-week window is a microcosm for the next 3 years. It's referred to as the eclipse window. So the way I think about it is that any major world event that happens in this 6-week window will open up and enact and play out over the next 3 years. And so if you want to know what the next 3 years are about, just pay attention to what happens in this sort of next 6 weeks. It started yesterday. We're only 2 days into this 6-week thing, and I just noted a couple of the issues that seem to be on the world agenda. We've got the immigration teams going around Minnesota and no doubt other places in America, and I wonder if that might lead to civil war. We have Trump's Board of Peace, which has effectively pushed NATO and the United Nations off the global centre stage, made them into paper tigers, really. Whether the Board of Peace gets up or not, Trump's Board of Peace, we'll have to find out. Other things that have been on the news are the shift of the armada of planes and boats gathering into West Asia, and the big question, will we have a war in Iran? One new thing that I've seen just in the last 24 hours is something called the Nipah, if that's how you pronounce it, the virus that's supposedly spreading from Asia. And there's at least a dozen countries, I think, that are quarantining and having all kinds of checks of people leaving. You may also have noticed, I think is it 2 or 3 kilometers worth of land in Sicily that has collapsed, and more than, is it 150 dwellings have fallen down. You know, so this is sort of major subsidence. I don't even have that on the list actually. Major subsidence of land in southern Italy. They're also talking about 9-meter surges coming out of the Atlantic Ocean and heading into Portugal. I don't know whether that's happened, but it's they're watching for that just in this next couple of days. And as everybody in Australia would have noticed, we're having huge climatic extremes, very hot, and then it goes cold. So that's just a few of the things that I've noticed sort of 2 days into this 6-week period. So I just suggest you keep a bit of a running tab yourself on what are the big global issues, because they will be on the world stage for the next few years. Yes, and of course, while we're having this outrageous heat in Australia, the winter in the United States and also in Europe is just beyond belief, extremely bitter. And I did also notice that in some parts of Australia, we've got the firestorms, but New South Wales and Queensland, well, maybe it's just Queensland, are still suffering from enormous floods, as is South America. Yes, and something that I read recently about the oceans heating up and how that may be, and I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe partly the reason why the sharks are coming closer to the coastline. And of course, we've had many people in the last week or two that have lost their lives to sharks, several anyway. So is the temperature in the ocean impacting the sharks, to say nothing of the whales, etc., etc.? Okay, so there's the eclipse, 17th of February, and we can watch it for the next 3 years. Now, because there's an eclipse in a fixed sign of the zodiac, there it is there, the sun and the moon in 2849 Aquarius. This chart's drawn from the perspective of Antarctica. So that's what we refer to as the void of course, moon and the sun, in fact, eclipse, which it's a bit like hanging on the edge of a cliff. So does this mean that Antarctica is hanging on the edge of a cliff and will just begin melting and dissolving at a faster rate? Is Aquarius humanity that's hanging on the edge of a cliff? What is it that's cliff hanging? Is it all of us? If you have a look at the chart, the first thing to notice really is that it's really not very balanced. All these planets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Aquarius, 1, 2, 2 in Pisces in the North Node, 3 in Aries, Uranus over here, and Jupiter. So the whole thing looks completely out of balance, like a top that might fall over. And the only point of balance in the chart is down here, the Earth, directly opposite the eclipse in the degree associated with the fixed star Regulus, which is associated with absolute megalomaniac need for attention, like we have with the crowned Mad King of America, or in its highest vibration, Regulus is associated with royalty, compassion of the heart. So the eclipse chart is kind of saying, where are you? Are you going to follow the mad leaders into the mad societal scenarios that are unfolding, or is humanity going to develop this royalty, this compassion of the heart, and how do we bring things back into balance? The other planet that really jumps out here is Uranus, which sits on the midheaven. And of course, because we're right down on the South Pole, the ascendant, there it is there, and the midheaven are only one sign apart. This is what happens when we have a charts close to the poles. We get imbalance. Okay, and we have a fixed grand cross, the number 29 there, the number 27 there, the number 29 down here, and the angles, the IC at number 26. So a fixed grand cross is, well, it's a challenge to the world disciples. to find balance. It's a challenge for all of those who are at the door to the path of discipleship to quickly transition across and move through. It's a challenge for the leaders who have compassion in the heart to be able to operate and act from the heart and to bring some sanity and balance. But it's something you can't overlook. When Uranus sits there like that, we can have the unexpected reversals. It's in the sign of Taurus. Is this unexpected reversals to do with money, to do with the continental shelf around the various continents? Is it to do with the homeless? Is it to do with the removal of cash? Any or all of those things? Is it land grabs? Think Greenland. Any or all of those things are possible when Uranus sits at the end of Taurus. We have a Pluto aspecting the Gemini ascendant through this dotted red line here. That's an unstable, hidden pattern, a bit like a tripwire. I often explain that it's a bit like a tripwire, and it's associated with the correct use of power. So this is a warning that if there's an incorrect use of power by the people on the world stage, think Aquarius, then we can be delayed or misinformed at best. And the end result of it is that humanity may well separate into two groups: those who choose the compassion of the heart and those who choose something else. Okay, so a fairly dramatic chart by any stretch of the imagination. And I did come upon this image of an iceberg, which someone's named A23A in the Southern Ocean. And apparently it's been observed drifting for the last, 5 years, 40 miles across, 60K, something like that, and 1,312 feet thick. But this is just floating in the Southern Ocean. So think Titanic on an epic scale. Will it melt? Is the ocean floor boiling? What will happen with this iceberg? And there it is, midway between the Antarctic Peninsula and the South Georgian Island in the southern Atlantic. So will it follow the Atlantic? Will it cause chaos with the sea lanes? Who knows? Okay, there's my internet going a little bit unstable. I'll just ignore that. So here we have the chart again. There's the eclipse, as I said, 29 degrees of Aquarius, cliff hanging. The other thing that I wanted to point out to you was that because Uranus and the midheaven are in this sort of late degrees of Taurus, that puts the deepest point of the chart, which we refer to as the IC, in the 27th degree of, is it 27? No, 2604, 26 degrees of a Scorpio, which is a degree associated with separation. So that theme of humanity being separated into two groups, those who choose the heart and those who choose something else, is part of the theme. And then Uranus is directly opposite the degree of cruelty. And this part of the chart, the IC, is the entry point for spiritual energies into our sphere. So it appears to me that we have great change and the potential for humanity to divide it into two groups, and that this will be according to our karma. This is not according to cruelty from hierarchy, but rather the cruelty that we perpetuate against each other. The Sabian symbol for this eclipse, this 29th degree of Aquarius, is the butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. A beautiful, beautiful image. But I realise that butterflies have 7 stages before they come out of their chrysalis state and become a butterfly. And now the 7 stages is a theme astrologically, because we live on a planet that's governed by karma, that's connected to the planet Saturn, connected to the 7 and 40-year cycles. So I start to think, well, as above, so below. if the metaphor is the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis in the 7 stages, is this clearing our karma and awakening consciousness in 7 stages? But are these 7 stages, are they 7 years? Are they the last 7 decades? Are they the next 7 decades? Are they 7 millennium? You know, because all of these are possible. Okay, now if you have a planet, or indeed your sun or your moon or your ascendant at the end of Aquarius, then the eclipse is falling smack bang on that planet or that midheaven or that ascendant. And given the degree of orb, you could say 3 degrees either side of 29 Aquarius, and that's from about 26 Aquarius through to about 2 Pisces, is in the spotlight. Yeah. So if you have your birthday around then, it's particularly important. And you could look either, you could say, well, your birthday, 5 to 7 days either side of the 17th of February means that the eclipse is falling around your birthday. It's not just the sun; it could be the moon, the ascendant, the midheaven, and therefore that theme that will create a theme in your life for the next few years, and particularly, I think for those who have Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. So you may not have a planet in the 29th degree of Aquarius, but you might have something in, I don't know, 29 Leo or 25 Scorpio. Yeah. So anything within that sort of narrow window, late Aquarius, early Pisces, or a square to that is brought into high focus, and you'll have to work on that. And the work is the work of discipleship, because this is the fixed cross. So we have to work to clean up our act, work to bring the heart forward, work to purify our shadow, work to connect to our groups and recognise that we are our brothers and sisters keepers, work to share those resources. That's the work of the fixed cross. That's what we have to do. It would be lovely to think that some of the world leaders would do that, but at least we can do our own work. Okay, talking here about Neptune entering Aries. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I've kind of lost track, so much going on. And as I said, it did enter into Aries in 2025, but it's going forward now. And somebody looked up the computer. Sorry, that's my internet going a little bit unstable. Somebody looked up on the computer what was the last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct in the 0 degrees of Aries, and apparently it was about 6,500 years ago. Whereas when you think about the fact that we're entering into a new great year, a new epoch that runs for 26,000 years, Neptune's one phase of that new entry. Okay, so here's the eclipse chart again, and there's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So there's the Saturn in 0 degrees of Aries and Neptune in 0 degrees of Aries. And because Neptune moves so slowly, even though Neptune's moved in a day ago, it takes until the middle of February to move 38 minutes. And by the time we get to the eclipse, Saturn sits there as well. So the eclipse is the new beginning of the great epoch. Whether it's the new beginning of the new great year, the 26,000 year, we don't know, but it's certainly a very significant entry. It's like going through the front door. Okay, so what we have to understand when we look at this entry is, what does Saturn stand for? What does Neptune stand for? And what are the rulers of Aries? Okay, now for those who have soul contact, this puts Mercury in high focus. So if I look at the chart and say, well, there's Mercury in what we call the cross quarters, 17, close to 15 degrees of the mutable sign of Pisces. So it's sitting wavering. You could say that I could speculate that some of the disciples on earth are yet to earn their stripes, do their work, show their merit, turn up, show up, step up for the hierarchy. But clearly we have to. Yeah. And maybe for some of us, we need to clear up some of our old or even ancient karma to be able to do that. Yes, other things to notice here in this chart is the planet Venus sits right on top of the North Node, or you might call it the destiny point for the chart. And you might ask, well, why is Venus important? Well, that's because Venus is to the Earth what your soul is to your personality. It is the soul sister of Earth. And the Sabian symbol for Venus, and indeed the destiny point for the eclipse, is the race begins. So what is this race? Is this the race for consciousness raising? Is this the race to shift on to the fixed cross before the door's closed? Is this the race to rectify the many wrongs and stabilize society and the planet? Yeah. But there's a race happening, and the jockey spurs his horse to great speed. So there's a very strong message there from Venus, the sole planet of Earth, that says there's a race and it's happening fast. Get going if we're going to move in the direction of the North Node in Pisces. And of course, even though we're leaving the Piscean age behind, the energy of Pisces is to do with an allegiance and an alignment to the divine within. That's the higher aspirations of Pisces. Okay, but going back to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and the sign of Aries, so for the disciples, we have to pay attention to the Mercury and to the Venus, but the hierarchical ruler, the ruler that the hierarchy use, the holy ones use, to have the bigger picture, let's call it the big game plan for this eclipse, is Uranus. Okay, so the die has been cast. The hierarchy will use the planet Uranus. They'll use the energy of the seventh ray for transformation of the planet, possibly of the global finances, and we'll see issues associated with transformation everywhere. Will it be money? Will it be territory? Will it be land? Will it be food? Will it be the continent itself? But we will see major transformation because that Uranus that squares the eclipse, there's the square, is in the hands of the holy ones. It's the hierarchical ruler. Okay, so if we speculate that the great year that lasts for about 26,000 years actually, and that's 12 of the various ages, if we speculate that that may well start, I'm sorry, there's my internet playing up again, that may well start on 0 degrees Aries, well, we say, okay, the last time Saturn and Neptune were together in 0 degrees Aries was 4,631 years BC. And I thought about that and I thought, well, that was around about the time of the beginning of the age of Taurus. Yeah. And of course, Taurus is one of the signs on the fixed cross and is associated with the preparation, I've lost the word, the preparation for those who will head towards the spiritual path. Okay, but when I think about 0 degrees Aries, what comes to my mind is Alpha and Omega, the Ouroboros. Yeah. And when I think of Saturn being there, I think, well, the Board of Karma are examining all kinds of matters to do with the karma of humanity. So therefore, it behoves me to examine my karma and certainly to do everything I can not to create any more, because Saturn's associated with karma, and to do this from a higher perspective, from the higher mind, because Saturn rules the higher mind. Yes, so we are in a very, very major cycle of karmic review that is way beyond our individual and national karma and goes into planetary karma. And then the other planet that's there at 0 degrees Aries is Neptune, the sacred planet of the sixth ray, which governs the highest ideals, the greatest devotion. So the question remains, how much of our karma from the last few thousand years have we managed to clear up? And where is our ideal as a species? What do we put on the throne? Do we put the God within? Do we put the Catholic Church? Do we put the mighty dollar? What is it that we revere and hold up as the highest ideal? Is it loving kindness? Is it a middle path? But they're the things we need to contemplate. And because these are the things that the spiritual hierarchy of Earth are contemplating as Saturn, Neptune make together move in ingress into 0 degrees Aries. Okay, Aries is one of the signs associated with death and rebirth. The other signs to do with death and rebirth are Scorpio and Pisces. But this Aries is, to my mind, the Ouroboros, the beginning and the end of time itself, where the deck is shuffled. So who shuffles the deck? Well, it's us as to how we've used our free will. It's the oversight of the spiritual hierarchy of Earth. It's the Interplanetary Council who shuffle the deck. How are humanity doing on the planet, and how is that affecting every other planet? Because we have reached the point of entry into the new time. And I'm reminded of the fact that on our planet Earth, we have an experiment as to whether or not we can manage to use free will well or not. So how we've used our free will is important. The sign of Aries is particularly important for the higher aspirants, those who are approaching the spiritual path, the higher disciples who are operating from the higher chakras and are not being dragged back into their old personalities, and of course the holy ones. So what's been happening with Aries? Well, Chiron's been for 7 years, almost 7 years. 7 years is up in June this year. Chiron's the Achilles heel of humanity. It's been moving through Aries for 7 years. There's that 7-year cycle again. So that tells us for the last 7 years, we have had the opportunity to heal ourselves, to heal the planet, to heal what needed to be healed. How well have we been done? How well have we done that? Well, that's in the balance. But Chiron moves on out of Aries into Taurus in June this year. Saturn moved into Aries last May and will stay there on and off until April 2028. Now, imagine if you'd been studying at a university for years and finally there comes the day where you have to sit the major exam and prove what you've learned and what you haven't learned, let's say in your 7 years of higher education. And eventually you hand in your paper and then you wait to get the results. So I look at this period here, May 2025, April 2028 at the latest, and say the results will be in. We will know, humanity will know, we'll be able to see it everywhere, who's passed, who's failed, how well, individually, nationally. And then Neptune's moving through Aries from last year when it started for the next 14 years. There's 2 lots of 7 again. So the 7-year theme is quite strong. Yeah. Okay. Did I mention the ordinary people? I think I forgot to say that Aries, for the ordinary person in the street or the ordinary ruler, the ordinary political leader is governed by Mars. And in that eclipse chart, Mars is in Aquarius. This is a combination of the 5th ray, technology, and the rational mind. I'm right. I know what I'm doing. Don't question me. And the 6th ray, fanaticism, put together. So we have fanaticism or war and technology. 5th and 6th ray, that's how the ordinary political leaders are using Mars in Aquarius. We could also have civil war or rebellion. Yeah. The disciples, as I mentioned, we have to get our Mercury together. Yeah. So in the eclipse chart, Mercury is in Pisces. You might have it somewhere different in your chart, but it relates to you being able to have a good connection between the crown chakra and the heart, and to have the intuition operating, to be in intuitive contact with your divinity. and to have an allegiance to that divinity and to not waver from that. That's what we need to do. That's the only way we're going to get the messages. We won't get the messages from any newsprint or any website of what might be happening or coming next. You'll get the messages when you're tuning in. Spiritual government of Earth, as I mentioned before, Uranus has a very strong connection to Aries. That's the hierarchical ruler of Aries. And so that energy of global transformation, which brings in, of course, the will of God, the first ray, and the avatar of synthesis. This is the times that we are living through. And of course, incumbent upon us, it is to find and walk upon the path which leads to soul expansion. That path is referred to as the burning ground. And the Lord Dwalkul tells us that Aries, at different points along the path, forces the soul, or we might think that's an interesting word, but calls the soul onto the burning ground and magnifies it and subjects it to the purifying process during incarnation. So spiritual fire is the path we walk upon in order to have expansions of consciousness. So the Tibetan, the Lord Dwalkul, has told us, and, you know, Victoria, South Australia, on fire. Spiritualization of at least 2 of the states. Yes, that 0 degrees of Aries is a woman, arises out of the ocean, and a seal embraces her. That's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I think the woman's humanity. I think the ocean's the delusions or the emotions or the astral realm. I think the embrace is this call to walk upon the fiery path and to find the way of the heart. And I think the Selkie or the seal is the mythological creature. That's us. Yes. Okay, so what do we do about all of this? I think it's extremely important to understand the big picture and know what's going on so that we can choose where we stand. So I choose sacredness, I choose compassion, but some people might choose the almighty dollar. The sign of Aries has a very strong connection to the ascension energy. And we are going the raising of consciousness. And of course, what happens is that as our soul would like us to raise in consciousness, our ego, our personality, our dweller wants us to stay where we are or regress or retreat or fall backwards. So there is a battle going on. Do we rise up in consciousness or do we revert to our worst case scenario? That's a battle for everyone on the planet. How do we deal with this? We have to live a balanced life. We have to get enough sleep. We have to eat well. We have to attune to the divine within. We have to recognize that in order to maintain that point of equilibrium and harmony and balance, we have to not be dragged into the conflict. Yeah? Surround yourself with beauty, with art, with music. Pay attention to the fact that we are guardians of the planet and of the animals. And in this way, the ascension energy will permeate and percolate through society into the individuals and around the planet. We don't want to fall into the 5th ray, the mind only, the old Atlantean way of controlling. We certainly don't want to descend into the materialism and think that the material world is all there is and the material world is supreme. So we're really being asked, who or what do we worship? The divine within, the animals, the planet, each other, or the mind to the exclusion of all else? I wanted to talk a little bit about Mars moving through Aquarius, and it will also move on and move through the sign of Pisces before it gets to 0 degrees Aries. And the reason I'm focusing upon Mars is because Mars is one of the non-sacred planets that potentially we can, if we don't use Mars correctly, we destroy our lives, our relationships, our health, you name it, things get destroyed. The ego, the shadow self, the dweller, reveals itself through the energy of Mars, and we see it politically all around the planet. We see the shadow self, the worst case scenario everywhere. But bear in mind that from the third week of January through till the 9th, the 10th of April, Mars is moving across that solar eclipse chart through the Aquarian energy, through Pisces, in order to get to 0 degrees Aries. So by the 10th of April. So what does this mean? Okay, so this is a hypothetical chart that I've done for Canberra, the 23rd of January, just to show you what I'm talking about. Here's 0 degrees Aries here. Yeah, it's not actually drawn on the chart, and we have Aquarius and Pisces. So Mars has to move through that sign Aquarius, through Pisces, across the last bit of Pisces to get to where Saturn and Neptune will be hovering by the time we get to that period of April. And so this is the reason why this is important is because if you want to heal yourself, you have to know your own shadow self. You have to know how potentially you will sabotage yourself. If we want healing on the planet, we have to be able to observe the shadow in action. So I suggest to you that over this period, late January to April, observe your shadow and also observe its movement as we see it in the world, because we are getting to a tipping point where the shadow or the darkness. I mean, what did Trump say recently? He said, I don't have to adhere to the rule of law. I don't have to adhere to the Constitution. I follow my own moral judgment or something like that. And I thought, my goodness, well, we're really in trouble when he says, I'm in control. Yeah. So if Mars, the ego, the shadow, is allowed to run amok and be in control, well, your life will be falling apart at the seams. So as we see the world falling apart at the seams, January, February, March, April 2026, know what's happening. The shadow self is marching. Yesterday, 28th of January, Mars and Pluto. Yeah, Mars moved up and was at the same number as Pluto, 2 of the non-sacred planets. So that's like it's like evil rears its head, hatred rears its head. Yeah, other dates, and I'm not going to talk a great deal about these, but you might like to make a note of them. 27th of February, we can expect upheaval of some sort between the 27th of February and the 2nd of March, because that will activate. Mars will come up and challenge Uranus. So we'll have a great deal of instability all over the global scene in those few days, and be very careful yourself when you're driving with accidents, things like that. It's extremely accident prone, and certainly don't make rash, selfish judgments. Mars goes into Pisces 3rd of March, and again, make a note of the middle of March, 13th to the 15th, because Mars will come up and it will attempt to, it'll get to the North Node and Mercury, where the North Node and Mercury were in the eclipse chart, and we may see some other big world event happening that is part and parcel of this division of which camp are humanity in, the camp of the heart or the camp of self-service. Mars gets to the cross quarters around about the 20th to the 22nd of March. That's just before it enters into Aries. And then by the 10th of April, it will be in Naught Aries, and Saturn and Neptune will be a little bit ahead of it, not much. So then we'll have 3 planets in Aries. So this is a few months with a great deal that will be happening, and a great opportunity for inner cleansing and inner redemption of the shadow self. Yes, I'm watching the time here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Aquarian energy, and what I refer to as the tech lords, or you might think of them as the new priesthood, because this is the very dark shadow face of Mars in Aquarius. And we've seen it on the world stage with the Davos meeting in Switzerland, wasn't it? Yes, the World Economic, was it the World Economic Forum were meeting, and they were glad handing each other and talking about their plans for technology and further propaganda. And this is just an image here of Elon Musk on the left, Starlink, and the guy who wants to sort of conquer space, and Larry Fink, who is the head of the finance organization BlackRock, who fund the wars on the planet, otherwise known as the military-industrial complex. Although I heard Jeffrey Sachs refer to the military-industrial complex today as the military-industrial digital complex, and I thought, that's it. There's the technologies come in and completely merge. There's been a wedding with the Dark Brotherhood around the technology in the last year or two. It's really gone into the stratosphere. And their stated goal is to get rid of the humanitarian organisations and replace them with global corporations. This is their stated goal. Okay, and if they do that, then they have biometric control of the cities, the nations, humanities. We know about this. There's the prototype ran with the COVID era, with the vaccination trial run. We've had the rollout of the 5G and the Internet of Things. They've been practicing with their new technological weapons of war in Ukraine and Gaza. They're trying to set up the biometric concentration camp in Palestine, and if we're not careful, it will be in a city or a town next to us. There's another one of the tech brothers, the new priesthood, Alex, what's his name, Karp from Palantir. And there's some sycophant European leader, Emmanuel Macron. And of course, let's not forget our esteemed leader who has bought into this Machiavellian plan for control of humanity through technology. Maybe he's been kindly, we might say, he's been bought in, or has he been coerced? We really don't know. These are the puppet masters whose stated aim, as under the 2030 agenda, is for free cities. But they don't mean freedom in the way you and I mean freedom. They mean freedom for the corporations to convert the cities and the states, and indeed land like Gaza or Greenland or maybe Canada, into their fiefdoms that they control. And of course, who was I listening to the other day? Alex, I've forgotten his surname, was talking about this is nothing new, and how the history of colonialism back in the 16th century began with the Dutch East India Company, didn't begin with the government, didn't begin with tech lords, it began with the corporation. And continents, Asia, Africa, America, Australia, they were all conquered. Yeah. And they're playing from the same playbook, but now they have the military industrial digital complex. And this is the prototype for the Board of Peace, where it's going to cost you $1 billion if you want to be a permanent member. This is the attempt to completely remove the United Nations, the death of the United Nations. Yeah, so we know that this is the techno-feudalist society. All of these are the main players. They lurk in the background. This is what I think it's important to know the enemy. They want to biometrically control, which means turning on or turning off your power, your water, your ability to access information, money. We've just had the hate speech bill rolled out in Australia so that you can be jailed for saying things that you disagree with. Electricity, water, gas, the smart meters, turn the phones on and off I was very shocked to discover that Palantir are the company behind the digital rollout in the supermarkets in Australia, in Coles, and no doubt other places. They want the ability to grow food, or food to be grown in laboratories. They want to take this away from the farmers and feed people laboratory food. And I was similarly shocked to discover, I don't know why I was shocked, that Palantir control the United Kingdom National Health Scheme. We know in Australia and all around the planet now they can turn on our ability to travel on or off, interstate, overseas, through the vaccination passport. So essentially what the globalists want to do is to remove the experiment of free will from you and from me and from everybody, and they want to hold the power of freedom. Yeah? This is not the spiritual plan for humanity and the earth. And people like Yanis Varoufakis, there are many, many people who know what's happening, who are speaking about this. And I really encourage you to speak up and spread the word that there's another way of doing things. We don't have to roll over and surrender. Yanis was in Australia a couple of years ago. I don't know if he's coming back. Sorry, my internet's being a little unstable. So what are the solutions? Well, we have to renounce selfishness. Must. Yeah? Chiron's been going through Aries, Saturn's in Aries. We have to give up self-delusion. Saturn's with Neptune. Have to pay attention to what it is you're addicted to. Material, physical, psychological, technological, financial, whatever your addictions are, you have to give them up. What do we replace those things with? Well, we have to choose harmlessness. Yeah? To the best of our ability, we have to strive to be harmless in every single situation. We have to practice non-attachment, practice equanimity, balance in the middle of the chaos. Attend to your silence and your meditation and your spiritual practices. Purification, body, mind, emotions. None of this is new to you, but we easily forget. We cannot fall away from this because we're on the edge of a cliff. Practice forgiveness for self and others, and open your heart to spirit. Trust spirit. So operate from the highest of the Neptunian and the Saturnian. Take responsibility. Live a balanced life. Live close to nature. Move away from the ocean, and accept the fact that there's chaos and difficulty all around us, and strive for the middle path, the equanimity. And if we're able to do that in such way, we will navigate our way forward for whatever it is that comes in the next few years. Okay, I think I've talked my way out of that. Yanis has a fairly new talk, which I saw on YouTube, titled The Imperial Board of Peace. Fantastic. Alex Kramer. I listened to him talking about the rise of oligarchy and the risk of civil war in America, and links to my website. Thank you for your attention. That's the end of this talk. Bye for now.